Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that's the Zoom phenomenon, you know? It's like, you can't have it too perfectly lit, but that's what I try to kinda struggle with this lamp over my head. But, Tim, how have you been, man? Like, through this, crazy, you know, fast-moving world in where we had to adapt, what have you, I guess, kinda currently been working on it? Start from there, I guess, but
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think for a lot of people, this year has been pretty productive actually in the creative world. I know so many people who have been waiting to make certain kinds of transitions in their creative life, and this was like the opportunity to finally do it. So, um, it's a drag staying in your apartment for a month straight at the beginning, but it's been a super productive year for me. I just put out this record, my first solo record, like 2.5 weeks ago now, or 2 weeks ago.
mm,
Um, and I was working up to that for like 6 months. I released a single a month for like 6 months, kind of experimenting with this new way that people put out music, which is kind of like one morsel at a time. I grew up with like going to the record store every Tuesday when new music came out, but you know, the game changes, and I've tried to change with it. So um, I've just learned a ton this last year, just like major deep dive self education on how to put music out these days and how to kind of do it effectively. Um, and finding plenty of time to do creative stuff too. I try to have kind of a creative routine. I get up in the morning, I do a little bit of exercise, do a little bit of meditation, and I try to sit at the piano for an hour first thing in the morning most
mm.
days, especially if I'm in a writing phase. It's been a little bit more of like a album release promotion phase right now, but I do try to keep the songs coming. So I'm already looking forward to the next record and ready to kind of get that rolling. I have plenty of new material to start working on. So
And the title of, the new album is, "These Things Are Being Gathered for the Fire." Am I correct,
yeah,
or is that
you're correct. It is a long title and it is a complete sentence.
yeah, yeah, right?
Yeah. Uh,
Um, g so when did you start concepting the album, I guess?
um, it's been a while. Yeah, I mean, some people, it's kind of the story behind the title is kind of interesting and sometimes worth telling. So I've had this album. Just a little background. I was a member of sort of the earliest incarnation of Arcade Fire, back in the early aughts, and went to school with Win Butler, the front man, or rather, we were friends. We weren't in the same school, but we were friends and played music together. And I moved to Montreal with them and kind of started that band. At this point, it's more like kind of it was called Arcade Fire, but in terms of like the history of the world at large, what they know of Arcade Fire, it's kind of like pre Arcade Fire in a way, but
Mm,
very formative. I think we all kind of like really impact each other at that formative age in your late teens and early 20s. And then I ultimately left the band to go to school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, but we stayed tight. And I was in a band after college called Wild Lights, who was signed to Columbia for a few years and kind of had a decent little run, did a lot of touring. We got to tour with Arcade Fire and the Killers and Doves, Wallflowers. That got to do a lot of fun tours, but our record didn't sell. Can I swear?
yeah, of course.
Yeah, our record didn't sell shit,
Yeah.
so we got dropped. And then, at that point, things just fractured in the band. They kind of fell apart, and um, I was ready to move on, and I had tons of stuff ready to go myself. So started working towards a solo project, and as the record was nearing completion, I was in a state of my health was really declining. I kind of have like a sort of mysterious autoimmune type illness. And it was getting worse and worse throughout the making of the record. I just like couldn't eat
Mm,
basically. I would have like a sip of a smoothie and I'd be in pain for days and
yeah.
kept losing weight. and ultimately I had to be hospitalized for like 11 days with malnourishment and dehydration. And it was kind of like right when I finished the album. It was like I crossed the finish line just in time for this kind of complete collapse. And so there was this period between the album being done and when it came out, when I had to kind of like rebuild my health. And at one point there was just in a really tough, I was just in a bad place. I was really struggling and having to rebuild everything, my whole habit, my lifestyle, my diet, everything. And there was this one night where I was, when you're like asleep, but you're not really asleep, you're like half asleep and you're thinking, but and it's just like you're not actually getting any rest. I was in this like kind of restless, semi-conscious sleep. And I was having this dream where I was walking and it was like I was completely encumbered with all the kind of like attachments of day-to-day life. Like I remember my pockets were full of like receipts and keys, and like I actually remember the detail, like empty contact lens boxes, like in to-do lists, all these attachments, and like this feeling. And it was sort of that infinite kind of way that only happens in dreams.
Yeah.
And it's like I was divided into a million different attachments and like trying to keep track of them all and couldn't. And I sort of was in a state of deep distress in a dream, and I cried out, "Why is this happening to me?" And as clear as day, a voice answered and said, "These things are being gathered for the fire." And I immediately fell into a deep and peaceful sleep. And so there was this sense that, yeah, I was going through hell, but like the reason was like all this bullshit was kind of like being consolidated, and it was going to be expelled or burned, or just to keep going. So that dream was kind of like this guiding. There was lots of times I had doubts whether I was ever going to get back to functional strength again. It was hard to imagine. I got really far away from making music for a period of time, but I kind of remember that dream, and it kind of like gave me a bigger picture sense of what was going on. And it was sort of the natural title for the album in that regard. It's always good when a title comes without you having to think about it. You know what I mean? It just kind of is like, oh, it's almost like somebody else said it. Same thing when you're writing a song. It's like when it's really working, it's like you kind of don't know exactly where it's coming from. And it's almost like you finish a song and it's like scary because you're like, oh my God, I have no idea how that happened. And I have no idea if I'll ever be able to do it again. I feel that way like every time I write a song. I've written thousands of songs, and it still kind of feels that way every time. It's like, oh man, wonder if I'll ever be able to do that again. But that's why creativity is, that's what's exciting about it, is the hope of surprising yourself. So record was in I mean, the record took maybe a year or two to make, and then there was a period of time between it being done and now coming out. But yeah, I worked with a couple producers. It started with a month in Harlem with a couple guys I was working with named Decap and Brady Watt, actually hip hop producers of all things. It was kind of a unique situation because I knew going in that like I play everything except drums. I play bass, guitar, piano, I sing. So I knew that I was going to be playing most of the stuff, but I don't play drums. So I didn't want to rehearse with a drummer for a year. So I just wanted to go in and do it. And so I needed people who could program beats. And so it was kind of this weird, it was one of these things that shouldn't have worked, but it did, working with these two hip hop guys who knew nothing about the genre of music. Like I'm literally playing them like Radiohead for the first time. And they're like,
Wow.
this is awesome. Let's make it sound like this. And I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I did a month with them, and kind of had some spot sessions after that. And we were just recording kind of DIY style in one of the producer's apartment in Harlem. And then kind of at the end of it all, I spent a week and a half in LA with like a, more of a pro situation with a guy named David Spring, who, works on Bob Dylan records and Lucinda Williams records and works on high level stuff. And it's just like kind of a top notch LA pro. And we kind of brought all the DIY stuff up to level. And that was kind of the process.
That's cool. Um, oh man, sometimes I kind of space out. So then I guess um, so now I guess how do you distribute the new album? I guess is it strictly via kind of doing these conversations and also kind of through Spotify, etc., or you have an online kind of media channel as well, or
Yeah, it's pretty much, I mean, that's sort of the burning question in a lot of ways these days. I mean, I grew up with like such a just things are couldn't be any more different than what it was when I was growing up. I'm figuring it out as I go. I'm working with actually two publicists right now. There's one who has been kind of more of a longer term thing, and then just for this month around the album release, I'm hired a second one to just have a little extra muscle for the immediate push around the release. But man, it's a tough nut to crack. I mean, it's grassroots, that
yeah,
it's grassroots, and you hope you get some kind of pop, and you hope you get some kind of like you're just rubbing sticks together trying to make a spark, and you hope you start a fire. I just get on the internet and hustle. Basically, I have like an online fan kind of group, like a private Facebook group where people who are into what I'm doing are in there, and it kind of grows a little bit every day.
nice.
And those are the people who are really engaged. And then, I mean, I don't know. The question of how you do it is, I don't know if it's a question anybody really has an answer to right now. I mean, obviously it's up on all the digital platforms, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
available everywhere, all that stuff. But how you actually get it to people is something I think everybody's kind of figuring out as we go.
yeah.
I mean, this is all self-released. I'm just doing this on my own.
Oh, cool.
And there's like label, I mean, I know from my history, there's lots of people that I'm like connected with in the industry and stuff like that. Who, I mean, it's not out of the question that at some point somebody might want to really put it out on their own label. But the way it is these days is just like uh, nobody wants to get involved until you got it going on your own,
Yeah,
basically. This
yeah,
idea that like you need to get discovered and these people are gonna like scoop you up and do everything for you. It's just like the reality is those people need to see something to be gained
yeah,
before, like anybody else. They're not like it's not charity for them. They need to see something that they have the it's an opportunity for them too. So I've been through all that with Wild Light. It was kind of a whirlwind. Like we went from playing to we were in Boston. We went from playing to like, I don't know, 15, 20 people at TT the Bears to uh we played one show opening for Arcade Fire in Boston, and we kind of brought the house down. We knew it was a big opportunity, and we brought it. And within a month, we had major management, and we had a record deal with Columbia Records, and we had all this shit. And so I've been through it in sort of like every incarnation of how it works. And I mean, that was great, but this is much more of a like, I feel like it might be a little bit more of a slower build, but it's like I'm building what I think will be a firmer foundation.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome if there's some kind of pop with this and it kind of just like goes to the next level. But even if it doesn't, it's grassroots. It's you plant the seed now and you yield at a later season.
yeah,
Um, but it's been exciting. We're getting some good press, and people are really responding well to it. It's like at a certain point I'll probably stop reading press, but at this point it's kind of like I need to track what's going on. And it's really been gratifying reading some of the reviews and people articulating like what I want to come across. It's like, all right, well, that person completely got what I was trying to do, like that. So that's sort of a relief after you're sitting on a release for a long time to have it come out. And it's like, okay, I'm not totally crazy. Like people are getting what I'm trying to do in the way I'm trying to do it. So Yeah, I'm just figuring out as I go. I mean, the last year has been a major learning process, so I'm sure that'll continue.
Yeah, no, I find it's more rewarding when you kind of go independently. Well, that's what I'm kind of in the similar process of, getting this show out and just organically getting the viewers and stuff like that, and also trying to, continue. I used to put together experiences of where I had the bands I've shot perform in a venue with my photographs as well, have a whole event and build that community and get it out there and self promote, which I loved, but I obviously had to take a hiatus on that for entire year. So I definitely know that kind of struggle of just or not struggle, just you have to kind of adapt and figure things out, and bootstrap things, right? But
Yeah, there's only so many hours in the day, and
yeah,
we do try to be creative people too. So it's an interesting mix. The sort of like character traits that go with promotion are not necessarily some character traits that go with creativity. So you got to kind of like, I just kind of have to accept that it is what it is. Like, I don't like promoting myself. I don't like putting it's like
yeah.
bearing witness to yourself. It's like it's nobody's first choice, but it's like it is what it is. I want to make music, and that's the way that it has to happen. So I kind of accept that.
Now, kind of flashing back, going to like a kind of historical kind of question. Did you always want to, be a musician, or pursue a creative path, or did you have other kind of interests when you were younger? And did you study music in school, or was that kind of a side gig until you kind of get the traction?
Yeah. So I mean, I started playing guitar, bass actually first when I was about 13. Up till then, I really just wanted to be a baseball player.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was like when I started playing guitar, I mean, it was like it was game over. It was
Mm,
right away. It was like this is it. My best friend, um, he had a guitar and he could barely play. I didn't play anything yet, and I would go over to his house and we would get out his little tape deck and we would make an album in like a night. We just like pubescent fucking screaming into a just like write 20 quote unquote songs in a couple hours and then go on the computer and make a little album art and liner notes and everything. And we did that every weekend. And yeah, I mean, as soon as I started playing music, I was obsessed. I mean, it was like I got 5 minutes until the bus comes in the morning. I'm in my room playing.
yeah.
So it was definitely like deeply like love at first sight once I got going. And yeah, I mean, as far as what I studied in school, I did not study music specifically, but it's actually what I studied was very relevant in my mind to making music. It was actually, I was in Arcade Fire, Montreal, and when I left to go to this little school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I mean, it's to this day, it was kind of the most tortured decision of my life because they weren't big yet, but I knew it was going to be big, and they didn't want me to leave, and I didn't want to leave, but there's this little school in Santa Fe, New Mexico that does this kind of like very unorthodox classics program that is all kind of, it's just a very specific program. It's all primary texts, they're primary sources. There's no textbooks. It's all small discussion classes. And it's kind of like you just go through the Western canon, starting at the beginning with like Greek philosophy and
Mm,
right up through the last century of the, like Nietzsche and Kierkegaard and everything in between. And, you just kind of, it's super intensive, like reading, the great books program is what they call it. And to
mm,
me, that seemed more conducive to my creative potential than studying music specifically. Like I kind of wanted the actual music side of things to be something I figured out myself to kind of like have um just to have my own voice be in it, but like being steeped in just kind of like the greatest works of art and literature and philosophy for 4 years was something I felt like was going to serve me for my whole life from a creative perspective. And it definitely does, I mean, if I don't know what to write about, I'll read Shakespeare for a couple hours and I have lots of ideas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, and there was music, actually you do music as part of that program. And I use that all the time too. Like, you start, it's not like studying music at a normal music school. It's like you start with the very beginnings of music, like chant and just like the
Mm.
single note melody kind of things, and then the evolution of harmony and counterpoint. And you kind of study classical composition and stuff like that, which I still listen to a lot of classical music and feel like that has an influence on what I do. But it's interesting because I didn't want to study music then, but now that I feel really sort of like firm in who I am and my voice as an artist, I would actually love to go to music school now and just like do, I'd love to be able to, I've done a little bit of like arrangement for strings and stuff like that, but I'd love to just get deep into harmony and theory and be able to fucking conduct an orchestra, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now that I kind of know who I am as a musician and artist.
Now, did any like one major philosophy or ideology kind of stick with you throughout? Like, I know obviously it's hard, and there's so many great works and thinkers out there, of course. But was there any one particular kind of ideology that kind of really you
Hmm.
connected to? I guess.
Um, I mean, there's lots of stuff definitely
Yeah.
that I connected to. I mean, I think in terms of like what I do, in the more I mean, it's hard to say like, yeah, I'm influenced by Plato.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind
I
of
know.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so it's hard to like connect what I do to that, even if it's true. But like when I think about artistic movements that are more kind of like that I do connect with, like I really connect with like modernist writers, even more than like postmodernist writers, like early 20th century, late 18th century, late 19th century. You know, I love Faulkner, Stendhal, Dostoevsky, Virginia Woolf, T.S. Eliot, the sort of, James Joyce, the people who kind of like really push the form in literature into like what became pretty experimental and kind of preceded the like postmodern. I connect less with postmodernism where it's kind of like tear up the rule book and there is no truth and blah blah blah. Like I kind of really connect with that last phase in a way of the Western mindset when these guys, I mean, people like Faulkner or T.S. Eliot, it's like what they're doing with the form is so, it's sort of like a final step, you know what I mean? Like you can't kind of go past that without tearing the whole thing up. And so I still come back to that stuff. And I like, but I also connect with, I connect with lots of stuff throughout the whole kind of period. Like I said, I mean, I've definitely been going back to Shakespeare lately. That just kind of always stimulates my language brain and gets me excited about what can still be done with language and stuff.
Now, do you take any like regarding your writing process as well? Do you take those like foundations of or syntax of like written language and use that into your writing process, or does I guess to your say like if you want to create new songs, do you just wait for like things to come to you, or do you have like a process of like I know the language I want to convey in a structured kind of format, and you go with that day by day, or how
Hmm.
does your process work?
Yeah, I don't wait. I think most people who are real pros don't wait.
Yeah, yeah,
I think you gotta meet inspiration halfway, and like I said, I mean, I try to, when I'm in a writing phase, I try to, first thing in the morning, I sit at the piano, I have my guitar with me, and I just sit there and I play, and I try to play without intention really. And stuff just comes, and it's not always easy sitting there. I mean, there's times where I'll sit there for 55 minutes and I'm totally listless. You know what I mean? It's just like, but you sit there. I literally set the timer, and it's like I'm not getting up till this hour is done. And there's been more than one occasion where I'm sitting there with nothing for 55 minutes, and that last 5 minutes I come up with something that's like becomes a great song.
Yeah.
So I think you got to put yourself in the position to receive. If you don't, you just might be waiting a long time for it to just like come to you.
Yeah.
And that does happen. There are times where it's like I'm just doing something else and I hear a hook in my head. But that's more likely to happen if I spent that hour in the morning getting my brain going,
Yeah.
and my creativity. So I like to have routines. When I stick to those routines, I find I never am lacking things to work on. I like words just as much as I like music. I put as much work into the words, I think, as I do into the music. And so, and it's a similar thing, like I'll just kind of free write a lot. I have a document, a Google Doc that's like 100 pages long, just with ideas, lines, fragments. So whenever I'm starting to try to like get some words going in a song, I can just kind of like dip in there and try to find something that's resonating.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I find too, where actually in the morning I do, I love writing myself. So I have a typewriter and just like free
Yeah,
write,
me
just a
too.
brain
I love
dump
the
of,
typewriter.
yeah. Oh, it's so,
There's something about the typewriter that is a nice format. I usually do either handwriting or typewriter. I don't do a lot on like a word processor when I'm working on lyrics, except to like sort of track stuff and keep it, keep drafts and stuff. But there's something about that like semi-permanence of typing that makes you both weigh the words, but also, I don't know, there's just something that works about that for me too.
well, it's that tactility, I guess, and now everything on digital, even like text, it's always, if you misspell something, it's always
Right.
like a automatic line you want to like try to correct. With the typewriter, even if you misspell or just brain dump, you just type away. So you're not just like, your brain's not like, oh, I need to correct this instantaneously. You
Right.
just go back when the page is done, and maybe if it's, if you're trying to write something besides brain dump, you go back and edit. But yeah, it's that, like, I think we've all kind of, our brains have all been kind of warped due to our digital age now, where it's like I think we've kind of digressed in our communication skills a bit.
Yeah.
I feel
For
like
sure.
probably younger generations than us too. Like, I can't imagine, just turned 36, so I can't imagine like, the decade generation behind me of just growing up with
Yeah.
cell phones.
I mean, it's like your brain develops differently, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, I feel it. I remember when the first time I got a smartphone and had like Facebook on my phone, it was like it was like my socio-neurology changed. You know what I mean? It was like your whole, so it's like, yeah, people, it is scary, thinking about, but it's not the first time in history it's happened. I'm sure when the Industrial Revolution happened, people thought the same thing, and it's true. It's like we were the ones who were already born with all those things lost. But it's creative destruction. There's things gained, and in the end, whether it's good or bad, it's not anything we can really stand in the way and change it or something. But yeah, it is interesting to it's interesting to think about. I had this experience the other day where I was going over to my friend's house, and it was like that kind of like dusk point period of the day. She lives in a residential neighborhood, and I was driving up the street coming to her house, and there's maybe like 10 neighborhood kids out in the road playing. Like one of them was shooting a basketball, one of them had a bike. They're just, and it just like it reminded me of like when I was a kid and you're playing and it's like it's getting dark and you just want to play to that like last available moment. And they kind of like, when I was driving through, they kind of like, I don't know, laughed or smiled or maybe did something slightly pushing the boundary of communication with me. And that was like super, I was really happy to see that, because I was like, okay, kids still play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like you wonder, like, are they all just in a basement playing video games while also looking at their smartphones? Like, so I think at the same time there is like some kind of like basic human, something basically human that endures all the changes, I hope.
But I also find that, well, particularly say for my example, it would be I found younger younger persons than I have kind of gone to analog, like say photography, and love
Yeah.
shooting film. And there's now I see in the city, like I'm in Beacon, New York right now, but I'm often in the city, and there's film development shops popping up, which is awesome. And you get stores where you get the film cameras and people, kids shooting in film, and kind of,
Mhm.
so that's great to see. Once again, that analog, kind of, people are recognizing we need a break from this just digital age, and we need to kind of keep that analog and tactility going, I guess, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I think I love records still, just a
Yeah.
record. The sound is so much more, I guess, warming for the soul, I guess. And you can, it's a different experience than listening to a Spotify, you know?
Mhm.
Well, I guess because then the ads are coming if you don't want to pay for the, you know, Spotify premium or whatever, there's going to be advertising directly injected
Mhm.
into your flow of music. So it's like, uh,
Yeah,
um,
I mean, and even if you do pay for premium, there's still just like this, that's why when I put out this record, I did the thing of like, I put out 6 singles. I put out a single a month for 6 months,
yeah,
because it's just so hard to get people to listen to a whole album. And I mean, I suffer from that when I'm on Spotify. It's just your attention span. I'll get, it's like you're halfway through a song and you're browsing around, it's just, it's definitely, you and I, to a certain extent, must miss the days of like, I'm driving around, I got 5 CDs in my car and I'm going to know those CDs really well. Or, you invested some money in one of them, and it's like you want to give it a good test drive before you either discard it or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, vinyl is the irony of it all is that vinyl will be perhaps the one hard medium that endures. It is the highest selling medium now, which is just like hilarious. I don't think anybody would have expected that when, vinyl died,
yeah,
in whatever, whenever that was in the 80s. Um, and it just kind of, so yeah, I think, yeah, it's like you have to remember that kids are smart and they go back when they get into something. I just have to remember how I was. It's like, I'm 40. I but like I listen, when I got into music when I was like 13, 14, I would go I listened to a lot of music from before when I was born. You know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean? Like, you go back, you get into it, and and now it's even easier because the information is just everywhere. It's so easy to find stuff. I mean, I remember the days when like if you were in a punk rock, you had to have like pen pals, and you had to send it, there's these underground circuits where
mm,
you would have to tap into to know what was going on. And so, I look at people younger than me now and I look at the music they like, and it's like greatness holds up, great music holds up over time and people find it. And so you know, there is some hope to balance the anxiety.
yeah, yeah. But long are gone are the days though where you could go into a record store and talk to
I
just an
know.
ultra music nerd that
I
would
miss
just
that, man.
lead you to
Yeah,
something
totally.
unique, that in-person experience, and that, you know just that
You know
community.
that I'm from the Boston area originally, and there's this great record store called Newberry Comics that,
Yep.
where are you based?
Well, I'm in Beacon, New York, but I was
Okay.
born in Bedford, Mass. So I know
Oh, okay.
Boston and
Yeah, yeah,
Cambridge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I lived in, yeah, and I mean, I lived in Boston, Cambridge. Wildlight was based in Boston, but I grew up in southern New Hampshire, so
Yeah.
like not a cutting edge cultural place. And I look back sometimes and I'm like, thank God for Newberry Comics, man, because they opened the Newberry Comics in Nashua, New Hampshire, and in Manchester, New Hampshire. Can you
Yep.
hear me? It's fucking
Yeah.
loud. Okay.
That's fine.
Um,
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
lawnmower outside or some shit.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was just such a great record store. They had really stuff that you could not find at Strawberries or whatever, which is generally the only option you'd have in most kind of like not cool areas or flyover state kind of places. And I mean, there's so much great music that I got turned on to just from going in there. I would go in there every week. It's where I spent all my money. You can still hear me? Is it
Yeah.
getting better?
Yeah. But it's getting louder, but
Yeah. Let me see. Dude, these guys. Well, I might have limited options here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would go into that record store. There's just so many. All right, stop for a second. Probably going to start up right when I sit back down. So much great stuff I got turned on to exactly that way, from hearing it played in the store or from talking to someone. I still remember getting the first Leonard Cohen album I bought from like talking to the guy who worked there. And it's like I wanted to get a Leonard Cohen album because of the line in the Nirvana song. Like, give me a
Yeah.
Leonard Cohen Afterlife. I was like, who's Leonard Cohen? What's that about? And talking to the record store guy and being like, get this one. This is a good one. And yeah, that was a really cool thing. But yeah, I think it finds its way. I mean, at the same time, there's so much information out. I mean, the great thing now is like if you are in one of those like kind of flyover state areas where there isn't really any culture, you really can find it. You don't need, the good fortune of having a place like a Newberry Comics near you is not necessary in the way that it was then. You can still find it if you're in like nowhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that's the plus side too with the web, and so much information and so many communities out there. You can find wherever you are. You could be mid America, wherever, and you can find your community.
Yeah.
No matter if matter it doesn't have to be a physical location or a store, like, but still, once again, it just you just miss that human to human connection and
Yeah.
the experience of physically going into the store,
I know. I miss it. I miss it big time. I
I
miss, I would go every Tuesday. The amount of money I spent at record stores is just crazy.
yeah,
I would go, just that experience of browsing and, after, 20 minutes, I have like 8 CDs in my hand. I'm like, okay, which 4 am I going to get? And maybe
yeah,
there's like one CD that you look at like every time you're there and it doesn't make the cut. And finally you buy it. And just that whole experience. I mean, it's just so fun. I definitely miss that.
I love their like weird like gadgets and toys and stuff and comic books as well. Just this
Yeah.
weird collection, not only
They're
just
still there.
are
Those
they?
guys
I thought
are
they closed
forward
down, but
thinking. Did they? Maybe they
I don't
did.
know. I don't know.
I think back in a
Maybe
while.
I
They
haven't been on
a lot
Newberry
more.
Street. I remember going into downtown Boston, and there was one on Newberry Street. I don't know if that closed down. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Last time I was back, what I remember is they did last a lot longer than most of. I mean, they were just always really forward thinking about evolving and okay, like CDs aren't selling the way they were. How come we can like evolve our inventory to have other
Yeah,
sources of revenue while also still having that? I
yeah.
mean, they had more and more vinyl as time went on and more like clothing and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe they're gone now. I haven't been back in a minute, but
Yeah.
they were definitely like fighting the good fight for a long time.
I have to look into that because I was just talking to my partner about that last night, and it was like, huh, I don't know if they're open or not.
Yeah.
because I haven't been back in a bit either. Kind of like a like reflective kind of thought. Like, how do you think your work, your breadth of work, has evolved since starting this kind of journey? Yeah, it's
Oh,
hard to kind of
mhm.
step back and look at your whole span of work, but how do you think? I find it interesting to see, like, if you could pinpoint how your early work has evolved to current stuff or
Mhm.
compare.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is hard. I think, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm still the same, you know? I mean, my ability to execute what I want to do has gotten better.
Mm,
But it's like that formative time of like the early Arcade Fire days. It's like I say, it was, as far as the world at large is concerned, it's more like pre-Arcade Fire. But in a lot of ways, I think it was more formative for all of us who were involved because it's that age of like 17 to 21 where you're like really like you're still in like sort of your developmental phase, and we were just like me and Win and Josh Dew, who was another amazing artist who was in the band at that time. It's almost like you're developing your creative manifesto or something, and we really pushed each other. Like we had really high standards and we were really honest. There was no like participation trophies, like in our creative life together. And it's like we really pushed each other to develop the standards that I think to this day we all still have. I think like when we talk, and we still all do talk, it's like we all still just kind of have the same standards. We've gotten better at executing them. And I've definitely like grown as a musician, like there's more things that I can do, but I feel like from that time, that formative period, sort of the manifesto remains largely the same, and I mean, on this album, there are songs from all different periods, of my life. There's songs, I mean, I think like probably the oldest song not in terms of it being released, but in terms of me writing it, is probably from back in those like Arcade Fire days. And then like everything from that up to songs that I literally finished in the vocal booth. So the fact that it all hangs together and is cohesive on one record kind of makes me feel like, I don't know, maybe it hasn't evolved that much. For some people, maybe that's different. I mean, it's like obviously you fucking listen to like the Beatles bubblegum shit, and then you listen to the White Album, and it's like, okay, there was some evolution there.
yeah.
But I think, I'm someone who don't like when I write songs. I think some people, it's like they make a record and they write a big batch of songs for that record, and then the best ones make it on and the other ones kind of get left in the dustbin or their outtakes or whatever. That's like not really the way I do it. The way I do it is all the songs I ever write are all in this like bag, and they're all there. They can all come out at any time. And so to me, like when I start working on a record, it's like when I started working on this one, there were like there's 10 songs on the album. 5 of them I knew were sure things. And then I was like, I just kind of trusted the process to like sort of show me which ones what were going to be the ones to fill out the rest of the record, which it did. You start recording 12 hours a day for a month, and things just start popping. Things get, and just you find yourself playing certain ideas, and it's like, okay, that song wants to happen right now. So for me, it's like no song is ever really left behind. They all can like emerge at any moment. I don't like throw things in the trash because like they didn't make it onto this record. It's like that song might come out again on the next record. So I think I have a deep terror of the blank canvas, the truly blank canvas. Like I always it's like I want to feel like, okay, if somebody called me today and it's like, all right, we booked studio time, you need to go in tomorrow, it's like, okay, I have some stuff I can do.
Yeah.
Like Win from Arcade Fire, he's not like that. I think he mass produces a shitload of material for each album. and then the best stuff goes on the record and the rest is just kind of like left behind, so different people work different ways in that regard, but for me it's more like it's all in the backlog and it can all come out anytime, and spend the rest of my life trying to record it all.
So it's I feel like y- in your kind of process and y- your breadth of work is just one continuous large volume of work comparatively to trying to create something new every time for an album, or the pressures from the commercial side of things. You're like, this is my breadth of work. I'll pull from the unpublished lines and put it into this album because it's timely. This is the time. So I feel
Mhm.
it's just one greater volume of yourself into the into your work.
Yeah, it's like if the songs hold up, if a song I wrote 10 years ago, I still find myself wanting to play it. That's the other thing is like for me, I want to like the more songs get better when you can walk away from them and come back to them. You know what I mean? Like you have clarity about things. I mean, there's a fine line because sometimes you don't want to lose that initial spark. You don't want to overthink things, but yeah, I mean, if a song, I still find myself wanting to play a song that's years old and I know it's good, you know what I mean? I think where evolution does happen is in production and in the sound of the records.
Hmm.
It's like any given song can be done in an infinite number of ways. So where there is, I mean, evolution implies this like development forward. So, and in my mind, that might not be exactly the right word. It's more just, it's almost like in some ways it's lateral movement sometimes, like I'm feeling drawn to these sounds right now. It's not like it's better, it's just what I'm feeling right now, like I'm already feeling like the next record I want to get more into synths and kind of just like this record has a lot of is very guitar based for the most part, and you're always kind of like reacting against the last thing you did. So I'm finding myself thinking a lot about synths and stuff, and more maybe keyboard based stuff on the next go round, maybe some more kind of like electronic sounds and stuff. So that's something that does change, but that the song can be done any number of ways and still be the same song.
Yeah, interesting. Um, well, any, I guess, kind of to wrap, any project or anything you think, oh, I know you've accomplished a lot, but is there anything you haven't accomplished that you wish you or you want to accomplish, like any project or even like write a novel or something, just maybe even not music,
Mm. Yeah.
anything just really that would be interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I do like to write. I feel like fiction. I like have too much respect for the art of writing fiction to think that I can write. It's like music. I mean, the whole like 10,000 hours thing. It's like you just have to like you have to spend so much time just to get to square one in a way, and because of how much I put into music, I know that the same thing needs to happen for most people to do that with fiction. I mean, there are exceptions. I just read The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by Carson McCullers, which she wrote when she was 23, which is just like not fucking fair. It's like unbelievable. It's like a
Yeah.
complete masterpiece. Some people just, that's how they are. But for me, I do like to write. I do think about writing books. They wouldn't be fiction, but there's lots of things I like to write about that are more kind of essayistic or like idea, intellectual, blah blah, whatever. But the main priority by far is to just make shitloads more records. I feel like I've had some lost time due to my health stuff.
Mm.
So I'm just like super focused on, I mean, like I said, this album came out 2 weeks ago and I'm already like chomping at the bit to start working on the next one. I just kind of want to have like a decade of, it's like 10 years from now, I hope I've put out at least 5 records. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll see. It's one day at a time, but yeah. I mean, for me, projects. I do. I do have some book ideas though, and I do like to try to, as my creative routines evolve, I do kind of like to try to find ways to work in writing just for its own sake, and see if that goes anywhere. But yeah, I mean, right now, by far, the focus is just sort of capitalizing on all I've invested into being a musician and a
Yeah.
songwriter and performer.
Now, do you have any? Are you selling this new album via on vinyl too?
Vinyl's gonna be coming this summer. Yeah,
Cool.
we are in the process of putting that together. So there definitely will be vinyl
Nice.
in the next, hopefully, like July or so.
Cool. And do you have anything? I know, bands are kind of getting back out there, maybe outdoor. Do you have any like outdoor shows planned, or I don't know how it
Yeah,
is in Austin, but
yeah, kind of just start live music is kind of just starting start back up.
yeah,
So definitely going to be looking to do some shows in the summer. Looking forward to doing some touring. We'll see how much of it happens on this record just because of the climate out there. The other thing is like the album is it's like when you listen to it, it sounds like a big rock band, even though I played most of the instruments. So that creates a bit of a conundrum in the sense of, I play shows solo, and I can play the songs by myself, but in order to execute the record, which is what most people want you to do in an industry type situation, in order to be able to tour and stuff, I kind of have to put together a band to be able to do that. And this will be the first time I've done it that way, where it's like I'm putting together a band to do something that's already done in a way.
yeah,
So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. The ideal way for it to play out would be like I get offered a tour or something. If there's an opportunity, that makes it a lot easier to get people in the fold. And deadlines are always great for those things. It's like, okay, we're going on tour in 6 weeks. We got to fucking pull this shit together,
yeah,
as opposed to like, let's rehearse twice a week for 18 months. And, it's just, I need things to happen more quickly
mhm,
than I needed them to happen. I just want things to happen quickly now in a way that they don't when you're doing the weekend warrior type shit,
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Cool. Well, Tim, I'll let you go and enjoy your evening or afternoon. I don't even know what time it is. It's only an hour behind in Austin, but I'll let you go. But thank you for your time and conversation. And I look forward to kind of checking out the album and spreading the word on your work as well.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Take care, man.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Be
Bye bye.
well.